Hi, in this video, we will read how to write the answer on AKI, acute kidney injury. Its pathophysiology, its causes, clinical features, management of the acute renal failure in children, also its investigation and management of the AKI. So let's start. Let's start with the etiology of AKI. Etiology is divided into pre-renal, intrinsic renal, and the post-renal causes. Okay, so the pre-renal causes can be dehydration, hemorrhage, burns, sepsis, capillary leak, and hypoalbuminemia. Intrinsic renal causes can be glomerulonephritis, post-infectious, HSP, membranoproliferative, antiglomerular basement membrane, hemolytic uremic syndrome, that is HUS, acute tubular necrosis, cortical necrosis, renal cortical necrosis, and renal vein thrombosis, and tumor lysis syndrome. So these are all the intrinsic causes. Now the postrenal causes is the posterior urethral valves, uretropelvic junction obstruction, urolithiasis, urethral strictures. Postrenal, that means after the kidneys. Okay, so after the kidneys, what comes? Urethra and the what? Ureters, right? So urethral valves. There is a defect in the posterior urethral valves. There is a uretropelvic junction obstruction. There is urolithiasis. There is urethral strictures. There is hemorrhagic cystitis. There is neurogenic bladder and the anticholinergic drugs. So in pre-renal, also called as the pre-renal AKI, also called as the pre-renal azotemia, it is characterized by diminished effective circulating arterial volume, which leads to inadequate renal perfusion and decrease in the GFR. What is happening? There is a decreased effective circulating arterial volume, which is leading to the inadequate renal perfusion is inadequate. Okay, there is what? There is inadequate renal perfusion and decrease in the GFR in the pre-renal AKI, and there is evidence of structural kidney damage is absent. There is no structural damage of the kidney. Okay, if the underlying cause of the renal hypoperfusion is reversed, we saw right that there is renal hypoperfusion, right? So if the renal hypoperfusion cause is reversed, the renal function returns to normal, and if the hypoperfusion is sustained, intrinsic renal parenchyma damage can also occur, right? So this was very simple. Because of the decrease in the effective circulating volume, there is renal perfusion, renal hypoperfusion, which is leading to decrease in the GFR. And there is no structural kidney damage. And if the renal perfusion is reversed at the optimum time, then the renal function returns to normal. And if the hypoperfusion is sustained, the intrinsic renal parenchyma damage can occur. Okay, now the intrinsic renal AKI. First, we read about the pre-renal AKI, then the intrinsic renal AKI. Characterized by renal parenchyma damage, including sustained hypoperfusion and ischemia. So, what is happening there is renal parenchyma damage is occurring due to sustained hyperperfusion, which was just the continuation from the pre-renal AKI, and ischemia. Ischemic or the hypoxic injury and the nephrotoxic insults are the most common causes of intrinsic AKI. So there is basically renal parenchyma damage which can occur due to ischemic or hypoxic injury and nephrotoxic insults. They are the most common causes of the intrinsic AKI. Injury can be at the level of glomerulus in the form of glomerulonephritis, right? It can be at the level of glomerulus in the form of glomerulonephritis due to what? Due to a variety of reasons, or at the tubular level due to acute tubular necrosis. So injury can be at any level, right? It can be at the tubular level due to acute tubular necrosis, or usually a result of hypersensitivity reaction to a therapeutic agent or various infectious agents. Fine. And in the post-renal AKI, it includes variety of disorders characterized by obstruction of the urinary tract. Fine. So there is what is happening in the post-renal one. There is basically obstruction. There is obstruction of the urinary tract. One second. There is obstruction of the urinary tract, and the relief of the obstruction usually results in the recovery of the renal function, except in the patients with associated renal dysplasia or prolonged urinary tract obstruction. Fine. So when the obstruction is relieved, the Renal function returns to normal except in which patients in which there is renal dysplasia or there is prolonged urinary tract obstruction. Okay, so this was all about the etiology of AKI, in which we read three causes: pre-renal, intrinsic renal, and the post-renal ones. Now, coming to what will be the clinical features of acute kidney injury (AKI). Uh, Careful history gives a clues to the diagnosis. There will be history of vomiting and diarrhea, pre-renal AKI or the acute tubular necrosis or HUS, history of recent pharyngitis. Right. What was happening in the pre-renal AKI? One second. Just one second. There was hypoperfusion, and hypoperfusion was due to decrease in the circulating volume, and overall decrease in the circulating volume can also occur because of this vomiting and diarrhea. Right. And the history of recent pharyngitis, periorbital edema, hypertension, and gross hematuria in a child post-infectious glomerulonephritis. These are all the symptoms of the post-infectious glomerulonephritis. That is, history of pharyngitis or the periorbital edema, hypertension, and gross hematuria. Right, nephritis. Now, the history of protracted hypotension or with exposure to the nephrotoxic medication most likely has acute tubular necrosis. A neonate with a history of hydronephrosis seen on the prenatal ultrasound studies and a palpable bladder most likely has congenital urinary tract obstruction, probably related to posterior urethral valves. Right. So, in clinical features, what can we write? Uh, History of vomiting can be present in case of pre-renal AKI or acute tubular necrosis or HUS. There can be history of there can be history of this pharyngitis or periorbital edema in case of this post-infectious glomerulonephritis, and there can be history of protracted hypotension or with exposure to nephrotoxic medication most likely has ATN, acute tubular necrosis, if there is history of exposure to this nephrotoxic medications. Then a neonate with a history of hydronephrosis seen on the prenatal ultrasound studies and a palpable bladder most likely has what? Congenital urinary tract obstruction, which is probably related to what? Posterior urethral valve. So these are all the clinical features. Now coming to the investigations. What investigations need to be done in a patient with AKI? So the first investigation is CBC, in which we will look at the HB, because anemia usually is dilutional or can be hemolytic in case of SLE, right? There is hemolysis in case of SLE, renal vein thrombosis, and HUS. Okay, so anemia will be seen in all these conditions that we just read. Now the TLC, there is leukopenia, will be seen in uh, decrease in the total leukocyte count will be seen in SLE or sepsis. Platelet count, there will be thrombocytopenia in SLE, renal vein thrombosis, sepsis, and HUS. Right, so this is what we will look in the CBC. Now in the electrolytes and the ABG, there will be hyponatremia if it's dilutional, and metabolic acidosis can be seen, and elevated potassium and phosphate and hypocalcemia and hyperphosphatemia may also be seen. Coming to the renal function tests, elevated serum 1 creatinine and the uric acid will be seen. Complement level, serum C3 level may be depressed. Okay, and antibodies, elevated titers suggest if the ASO is increased, then PSGN, if ANA, then SLE, if ANCA, then granulomatosis with polyangiitis and microscopic polyarteritis, glomerulo basement membrane antigens, Goodpasture syndrome, right? So, if antibodies are present or elevated in the titer, then we have to rule out these conditions. In the on urine routine, what will be seen? There will be hematuria, proteinuria, and the red blood cells of the granular urinary cast suggest intrinsic AKI. Okay, in particular glomerular disease and the ATM. The presence of white blood cells and the white blood cell cast with a low-grade hematuria and proteinuria suggests the tubulointerstitial disease. So yeah, right. Via the urine routine, what we can differentiate is uh, whether it's a glomerular disease or whether it is a tubulointerstitial disease, right? So if it is a tubulointerstitial disease, no, then there will be presence of white blood cells and white blood cell cast, and low grade of hematuria will be seen. and proteinuria will be present. In case of any glomerular disease and acute tubular necrosis, there will be hematuria, proteinuria, and red blood cells or granular urinary casts will be seen in intrinsic AKI. Urinary eosinophils may be present in some children with the drug-induced tubulointerstitial nephritis. Okay, moving ahead to the urinary indices. We are differentiating on the basis of the values in pre-renal AKI and the intrinsic AKI. So in pre-renal AKI, no, the your specific gravity is increased to more than 1.020, and in intrinsic AKI it is decreased to less than 1.010. Urine osmolality is increased in elevated in pre-renal AKI to more than 500 milliosmol, and it is in the intrinsic one it is low to less than 350 milliosmol. Urinary sodium is less low in pre-renal AKI and high in intrinsic AKI. Urinary sodium will be less than 20 milliequivalents and more than 40 milliequivalents in intrinsic AKI. And FeNA less than 1% in pre-renal and more than 2% in the intrinsic AKI. Now let's look at the reasons for all these values and why they are elevated or why it's low somewhere, right? So look, in pre-renal AKI, no, kidney is still working, so it conserves water and it concentrate the urine, which makes the specific gravity to be elevated. But in intrinsic AKI, the tubules are damaged, so it cannot concentrate the urine, making the specific gravity to fall. Okay. Now in urine osmolality, same. Water is pre-renal AKI, kidney still working. Water gets reabsorbed, urine becomes concentrated, so that increases the urine osmolality. Now urinary sodium. So RAS is activated in pre-renal AKI and sodium retained, so which restores the blood volume. And in the intrinsic AKI, tubules cannot reabsorb the sodium, so sodium is lost in the urine. That's why urinary sodium is high. Again, this FeNA. So, what is this FeNA actually? FeNA is fractional excretion of the sodium. It tells us the percentage of sodium which was filtered by the kidney and which is actually excreted in the urine. Okay, it helps us differentiate between these two values, renal AKI and the intrinsic AKI. Fine. So, why is FeNA less in pre-renal AKI? Because most of the filtered sodium is reabsorbed. Fine. What is the formula? What is FeNA? Basically, if we write it in a formula, so the formula is basically this: urinary sodium upon serum sodium into serum creatinine upon urinary creatinine into 100. So it's basically urinary sodium and serum sodium. That is how much of the serum sodium is filtered into the urine. We saw, right, because in pre-renal AKI the kidney is still absorbing, still working, so the most of the filtered sodium which is present in the serum gets reabsorbed, so the urinary sodium is less, that's why it is less than 1%. But in the intrinsic AKI, sodium reabsorption is impaired due to the tubular injury, that's why urinary sodium is more, which is so it's basically more than 2% in intrinsic AKI. But in neonates, no, because the kidney is not mature, right? That's why normal FeNA is also higher in neonates. Moving ahead to the other investigations, we can do chest X-ray. Chest X-ray may reveal what? Cardiomegaly, pulmonary congestion, pointing to fluid overload or pleural effusion. In renal ultrasonography to find out the cause of renal failure, such as the obstruction of the urinary tract or the presence of the intrinsic renal disease, and renal biopsy required to determine the precise cause of the AKI in patients who do not have a clearly defined prerenal or post-renal AKI. And there are certain biomarkers like the plasma and the urinary neutrophil gelatinase associated lipocalinin, that is NGAL, that is what? Neutrophil gelatinase associated lipocalin. cystatin C levels, interleukin 18, and kidney injury molecule KIM1. Okay, so these are all the investigations that could be done in case of AKI, CBC, electrolytes, and ABG, renal function test, complement levels, antibodies, urine routine, and chest X-ray, renal ultrasonography, renal biopsy, and the biomarkers. Now let's read about the treatment of acute kidney injury. So insertion of the urinary catheter to measure the exact urine output are also helpful in patients with the posterior urethral valves. So what insertion, in this point we read about the insertion of urinary catheter to measure the exact urine output. Also fluid bolus of 20 ml per kg of the normal saline if pre-renal AKI is suspected. So in case of pre-renal AKI we read, right, there was hypoperfusion in the kidney. So a fluid bolus of 20 ml per kg of normal saline is helpful. Diuretic challenge with the injection furosemide 2 to 4 mg per kg bolus, followed by the continuous infusion if no response to therapy. So, apart from that, we can give diuretic challenge with injection furosemide in the dose of 2 to 4 mg per kg bolus, followed by a what? Continuous infusion. If no urine output despite these measures, then restrict the IV fluid to 400 ml per meter square plus the amount of urine output. Okay, so if we did the fluid bolus, we did the furosemide injection. After that, also, if there is no urine output, then what are we supposed to do? We have to restrict the IV fluid to 400 ml per meter square and the amount of the urine output. Treat the hyperkalemia, metabolic acidosis, hypocalcemia, and hyperphosphatemia. We have to treat all these electrolyte abnormalities if anything is occurring, and treat the hypertension and press if present. So here a new term has occurred, that is press. We will read about this in the end of this video. Nutrition. In most cases, sodium, potassium, and the phosphorus should be restricted. In case of AKI, we have to restrict the sodium, potassium, and phosphorus. Okay. And protein intake should be moderately restricted while maximizing the calorie intake. We should moderately restrict what? Protein intake. And we should maximize the calorie intake. Okay. To minimize the accumulation of nitrogenous waste. Right. Because protein intake causes nitrogenous waste. Renal replacement therapy, there's something called this. What is the indication of this renal replacement therapy? First one is the anuria, oliguria, or the volume overload with evidence of hypertension or the pulmonary edema refractory to diuretic therapy. Fine, then in this case we have to do the renal replacement therapy. Then if there is persistent hyperkalemia, if there is severe metabolic acidosis unresponsive to the medical management, or if there is uremia, encephalopathy, and pericarditis and neuropathy is occurring, or calcium phosphorus imbalance is occurring with the hypocalcemic tetany that cannot be controlled by other measures, or there is inability to provide nutrition due to fluid restriction. In that case, also we have to do the renal replacement therapy. And how can this renal uh, replacement therapy be done? By either peritoneal dialysis or intermittent hemodialysis or continuous renal replacement therapy. So let's see a trick to remember the indications for the renal replacement therapy. First, that is AEIOU. A is severe acidosis. Okay, severe acidosis refracted to the medical treatment. We read here also, right? Severe metabolic acidosis. There is unresponsive to the medical management. From E, there is electrolyte abnormalities, especially refractory hyperkalemia. Right? We saw here hyperkalemia. That is from E, electrolyte abnormalities. Then I, certain intoxications, which are dialyzable toxins. Okay, and from O, fluid overload causes respiratory distress or not responding to diuretics. Right? We saw, right? Hypertension or the pulmonary edema, refractory to diuretic. That is volume overload, or anuria, or in case of oliguria also. And from U, there is uremia. Uremia is what? Encephalopathy, pericarditis, and the severe symptoms. So, in case of uremia, also, and when there are symptoms of uremia like encephalopathy or pericarditis or neuropathy is occurring, and calcium will also be uh, under electrolyte abnormalities, calcium and phosphorus imbalance with a hypocalcemic tetany, and inability to provide nutrition due to fluid restriction. So in these cases, we have to do the renal replacement therapy. So this was all about the treatment that we have to do in case of AKI. Let's revise what we are supposed to do in patients of AKI. We have to insert a urinary catheter for the exact urine output measurement. Okay. We have to give a fluid bolus of 20 ml per kg of normal saline if we are suspecting a pre-renal AKI, and a diuretic challenge with the injection furosemide in the dose of 2 to 4 mg per kg of bolus needs to be done, followed by a continuous infusion if no response to the therapy. Even after giving the fluid bolus and the injection furosemide, if there is no urine output despite these measures, then we have to restrict the IV fluid to 400 ml per meter square plus amount of the urine. Fine. We have to what? Restrict the IV fluid to 400 ml per meter square plus the amount of the urine. This much fluid needs to be given only. We have to treat the hyperkalemia, metabolic acidosis, hypocalcemia, and hyperphosphatemia. We have to treat the hypertension or stress that we will read. And the nutrition in most cases, sodium, potassium, and the phosphorus should be restricted. Protein intake should be moderately restricted and maximizing the calorie intake. Renal replacement therapy, we saw the indications, right? A, E, I, O, U, there are the vowels, and from A, it stands for severe acidosis, which is severe metabolic acidosis unresponsive to the medical management, and from E, it is electrolyte abnormalities, mainly what? Hyperkalemia. And I, there is certain intoxications. From O, there is fluid overload, which is causing respiratory distress or not responding to diuretics. So this fluid overload is causing respiratory distress, like causing pulmonary edema refractory to the diuretic therapy, right? Or there is anuria or oliguria, and there is uremia with encephalopathy, pericarditis, or severe symptoms. Encephalopathy, pericarditis, or neuropathy. Also, there is calcium phosphorus imbalance with the hypocalcemic tetany that cannot be controlled by other measures. Right, and the modalities of the renal replacement therapy are peritoneal dialysis, intermittent hemodialysis, continuous renal replacement therapy. Now let's read about the breast, as I promised to cover this in the end. Breast is basically posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome. So it is a neurological complication that can occur in the children and adults with the AKI, particularly when the AKI is associated with severe hypertension. Then PRES can occur when AKI is associated with severe hypertension. So what is PRES? There is the full form is posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome. It is a syndrome which is characterized. One second. There is a syndrome which is characterized by what? There is headache. There is altered sensorium. There are seizures, often the presenting feature in the children. There are visual disturbances. There is vomiting. Neuroimaging MRI typically shows vasogenic edema predominantly in the parieto-occipital regions. Okay, and what will be seen on the MRI? There is vasogenic edema predominantly where in the parieto-occipital regions. Now, why does this occur in the AKI? Why does this stress occur in the AKI? As AKI can lead to fluid overload, salt and water retention, severe hypertension. So, when the blood pressure rises beyond brain's autoregulatory capacity, cerebral vessels they dilate excessively and the blood-brain barrier becomes disrupted. So the fluid leaks into the brain parenchyma, producing vasogenic edema. Okay, because the blood-brain barrier is disrupted, so the fluid leaks into the brain parenchyma, producing vasogenic edema. This edema is most prominent in the posterior cerebral region, hence the posterior reversible encephalopathy syndrome. Okay, this is just some urine sediment pearls. There is RBC cast is seen in if RBC cast is seen, it suggests glomerulonephritis. Dysmorphic RBCs is seen in glomerular disease. Muddy brown granular cast is seen in the acute tubular necrosis. WBC cast is seen in the interstitial nephritis or pyelonephritis. Eosinophiliuria is seen in the drug-induced acute interstitial nephritis. Right, RBC cast, glomerulus. We have to remember this is a trick. Granular cast, tubule is affected, and WBC cast, interstitium is affected, like the acute interstitial nephritis or pyelonephritis. So this was all about the treatment of acute kidney injury and about PRES. Thank you.